Today, I want to show you how you can use GIMP. GIMP is an extremely powerful, free, and open source image editing program. It's basically an extremely powerful version of Microsoft
Hello
Paint.
again.
It's an equivalent to Adobe Photoshop, but it comes with none of the cost. You can use GIMP for graphic design, photo manipulation, or even pulling together YouTube thumbnails. In this video, we're going to start with how you can even get GIMP. Next, we'll pull together a poster for the Kevin Cookie Company, and by doing that, you'll learn about all the fundamentals in GIMP. My goal by the end of this video is for you to have a solid understanding of how GIMP works. Alright, let's check this out. To download GIMP, simply head to the website gimp.org. I've also included a link right up above and down below in the description. Once you land on the homepage, you'll see a very prominent download button. Simply click on that and then install. Now, GIMP is completely free, but one thing to call out, if you find that you're getting a lot of value from GIMP, I would recommend donating. On the homepage, in the top right-hand corner, you can donate to support the continued development of GIMP. Once you launch GIMP, you'll see an interface that looks like this, and at first glance, it might look a little bit intimidating. But don't worry, we're going to walk through step by step how most of this works. In the top left-hand corner, you'll see the toolbox. This contains all of your different tools that you can use to manipulate your image. Here, when I hover over one of the tools, you'll see a tooltip that describes what this tool is. Also, over on the right-hand side, you'll see the shortcut key to activate this tool. For the Move tool, I could press M. Here, when I go over to the Rectangle Select tool, you'll see it's R. So here I can press R, and that changes the tool, and here I'll press M, and that changes the tool. That's a quick way to jump between your different tools. One thing you might have noticed is, when you look at one of these tools, you'll see that there's a triangle in the bottom right-hand corner. And when I hover over, you'll see that there are multiple tools within this group. If I press my right mouse button, here I can shift between the different tools within that group. So here I can shift to the Ellipse Select tool, and here I'll right click and I'll shift back to the Rectangle Select tool. Later on, I'll show you how you can create your own groups of tools, and I'll even show you how you can remove groups altogether. When I click on the various tools, you'll notice that the tool options down below change. With the tool options, I can define how all of these different tools work. In between the toolbox and the tool options, you'll notice two colors here. I have black and I have white. Black is my foreground color, and white is currently set as my background color. Here I could click on the color, and I could choose a new color, so let's go with a red. Click on OK. If I want to swap the foreground with the background, I can click on this arrow icon, and that'll swap the two. If I want to restore this back to the default, down below I could simply click on this black and white icon, and that'll restore it back to the original set. With GIMP, you can configure the interface to your liking. Here with my toolbox and the options, I'll click on this line right here and I can expand it, or I can contract it. I can set this to the exact dimensions that I like. Over on the right-hand side, I see a collection of tabs that help me work faster. Here I see all of my brushes, and I can jump into any one of these brushes. I also have patterns, fonts, and all of the history. If I click on this icon over here, I can add additional tabs. Let's say, for instance, I want to work with gradients. Here I'll add the Gradients tab, and here I can very quickly choose a gradient. If I no longer want this tab open, I can click on this once again, and here I'll select Close Tab. Along with opening and closing tabs, here I can drag one of these tabs out, and I can move it into its own separate window. Here I'll close it again. Down below, I have some additional tabs here for layers, channels, and paths. And later on, we'll get into how you can use some of these. And also down below, here I can also customize the tabs that I have available in this section. Next, we're going to look at the menus across the top. Up on top, you have your File menu, and this is where you can do things like open, save, or print out your image. You also have the Edit menu, and this is where you can do things like undo, redo, or cut, copy, paste. Next to that, we have the selection menu, and this is where you work with selections. Later on, we'll get into how this works. You also have the view menu. This is where you could adjust the magnification. You could turn on or off grids. This menu does not affect the image itself. It's simply how you view the image. Next to view, we have the image menu, and this is where you can make changes to your image. You could create a duplicate copy. You could scale your image, so if you want it larger or smaller. You can make transformations, like rotate the image. Next to that, we have the layer menu, and we're going to work extensively with layers today. The easiest way to think of a layer is it's like a stack of slides, and when you look through them, you see a composite of all of their contents. You'll have the first slide on top and the last slide at the bottom. And if that doesn't make that much sense yet, don't worry, we'll get into how it works. Next, we have the colors menu, and this is where you can adjust the colors of your image. We also have the tools menu, and this is where we can select all of the different tools that are available in our toolbox. So it's just another way of getting to that same set of tools. Next to tools, we have the filters menu, and this is where you can apply different creative effects to your image. We also have windows, and this is where you can adjust all of the different dialogues and docs that are visible on your screen. And last, we also have the help menu. You've probably noticed that you can customize quite a bit with GIMP. Next, we're going to look at how you could customize just about the entire experience to fit your style of working. Currently, I have everything contained within one window in GIMP, but I can also have all of these docs appear as separate windows. Here I'll click on the Windows menu, and I'll turn off single window mode. And here now you see I have multiple windows with the experience. I'll go back to single window mode. There are a lot more customizations that we can make. I'll go up to the Edit menu, and down here let's click into Preferences. You'll see that there are many different preferences that we can adjust. I'm going to just hit on some of the major options. Right here under Theme, you can select whether you want a dark theme, and that's currently the default. But here I could switch into a light theme. I'll go back to the dark theme. I could also choose different icon themes, and here you see that it's currently set to symbolic, but here I could change it to color icons. So if you prefer that, you can change it. I'll go back to symbolic. Right here, I can also adjust the toolbox and what tools appear within the toolbox. Here, for example, I could turn off the move group, and you'll notice that it disappears from my toolbox. Here too, you'll see that everything is currently within a group. I could move different items between groups, or even I could turn off groups altogether. So here I see all of my tools just in one view. I'm going to leave it set to the default, and for now, this is all I'm going to change. Here I'll click on OK. With all of that now out of the way, let's design a poster for the Kevin Cookie Company. First, we're going to create a new file. Let's go up to the File menu and then select New. Within the New dialog, right up on top, I can start from a template, and you can even create your own templates. Here I see many different options, and the GIMP developers have a pretty good sense of humor. Here there's even a template for toilet paper, if that's what you fancy. Here I'll go back. Now, I want to create a poster today for the Kevin Cookie Company. So I'm going to create an 8x10-inch poster. Right here, I can change the unit of measurements. It's currently set to pixels, but here I'll change it to inches. Right over here, I'll type in 8 for the width, and here I'll type in 10 for the height. And if you want to follow along, feel free to. Right down here, I could also look at advanced options. I could set things like the resolution, the color space. I could even set what I want the default fill to be. Here I'll just set it to the background color, which is currently set to white. This all looks good, so I'll click on OK. I now have my new image open, and right up here above my image, you'll see that this shows me a thumbnail of what my file looks like. Here I can close the file. And if I have multiple files open, I would see them across the top here. Before we start adding content to our poster, a good practice is to save it. Once again, let's go over to the File menu, and here I'll click on Save As. Within the Save As dialog, here I'll give my image the name Kevin Cookie Company Poster.xcf. So what is XCF? This is GIMP's native file format, and it'll preserve things like the layers and other aspects of your work. So this way, if you want to come back later and continue working on your image, it'll make it easier. And later on, we'll look at how you can export your image as a JPEG, a PNG, or a GIF. For now, this all looks good. I'll click on Save. Now that we saved the file, I want to show you how you can navigate around your canvas. Here with the canvas, I can press my middle mouse button and I can pan all around. I could also press the space bar, and here I can simply move my mouse, and that also allows me to pan around. I can press the control key and move my mouse wheel to zoom out, and I can move my mouse wheel forward with the control key to zoom in. Alternatively, I could also press the plus key to zoom in to where my mouse is, or I can press the minus key to zoom out. Those are just a few ways that you can move around your image. If you'd like to follow along today, I've included some sample image files right up above and also down below in the description. This way you can do exactly what you see me doing. Here I have all of my sample images. I'll drag and drop them into GIMP. Here I get a prompt asking me if I want to convert the images to the GIMP color profile. Let's click on Convert. I can now see that GIMP added all of my images to the canvas. Also, over on the right-hand side, I can see that it created a new layer for each one of my images. Here the stack of cookies. That's the topmost layer, and I also see it on the top of the list over here. So what is a layer? Layers allow you to work on items independently from one another. Here, I can hide different layers. So let's say I want to hide the stack of cookies. Here, I'll click on the eye icon, and the stack of cookies disappeared. Here, the Kevin Cookie Company logo is next, and I could hide that layer. Here, I'll hide the next layer, and here we're back to the canvas or the white background. Here, I can click on each one again, and I can show each layer once again. Let's say I want to work with just one particular layer. Let's say the logo. I can press the Shift key and then once again click on the eye icon, and this will be the only layer visible. You'll notice that there's a checkerbox background behind the logo. This means that it's a transparent background. To show all my layers again, once again I'll press the Shift key and click on the eye icon, and here I can see everything. I also have a few different settings related to layers. I can choose how I want to combine the different layers. I can choose the transparency or the opacity. So here with the stack of cookies, here if I lower the opacity, you'll see that it's semi-transparent and I can see what's behind it. Here I'll increase it again. I could also lock different elements. Here for example I could lock the pixels, the size and the position, and also the alpha channel. For the poster, I want to work from the back of the poster or the bottommost layer up to the topmost layer. So I want to start working with the background. Here I'll hide the top 3 layers, and here I can just see the background. Now I want the background to fill the entire canvas. Here I'll press Control and move my mouse wheel to zoom out just a little bit. Over on the left hand side in the toolbox, here I'll select the Scale tool. The Scale tool allows me to rescale an item. Here I'll select the baking background, and I can now click on that background to scale it. So here I'll increase the size. Here I can click in another corner, and here I could increase the size this way. So I can position the image right here. Here I'll click on the background so I can see the dimensions of the original 8x10 poster. And this looks like good framing for the background, and I'm satisfied with where that is. Here I'll click on the button that says Scale. My background has now been rescaled to fit the dimensions of the poster. With my background now in place, I want to make it a little bit darker so the contents that I place on top of the background stand out just a little bit more. And I'm going to use a new layer to accomplish this. Down below in the right hand corner, I can click on this plus icon to add a new layer. I'll click on this. For the layer name, I'll call it Black Overlay, and all of these other settings look fine. I'll click on OK. Όσοι είναι φωτογράφοι, πολλές φορές χρησιμοποιούν το RAW και τραβάνε φωτογραφίες με RAW. Το RAW ουσιαστικά δίνει το 100% της φωτογραφίας. Τώρα τι κάνουμε. Εδώ πέρα θα πειράξουμε τα blacks, θα πειράξουμε τα whites, το shadow, τα highlights, το contrast. Ουσιαστικά θα παίξουμε ανεβάζοντας το ένα το άλλο και θα δώσουμε στη φωτογραφία μας το πιο σκούρο και το πιο ζωντανό χρώμα. Ουσιαστικά θα ανεβάσουμε τα highlights, θα κατεβάσουμε τα shadow, θα ανεβάσουμε λίγο τα black και θα κατεβάσουμε λίγο τα whites. Οπότε σαν πρώτα να κατεβάσουμε λίγο τα white, κάπου εδώ, ερχόμαστε, κατεβάζουμε λίγο τα black, ερχόμαστε, κατεβάζουμε λίγο τα shadow και ερχόμαστε και ανεβάζουμε λίγο τα highlight.
Now, this doesn't look so good. Right now, I just have a black image. What happened to my background? Well, if we look over at the layers, remember that my black overlay is now sitting on top of the baking background. Here, if I hide this layer, once again, I can see the background. But here, I'll turn it on so I can see that layer again. Now, I just wanted to make the background just a little bit darker. So right up above, I can adjust the opacity. So let's say I bring that down to about 70%. There, it darkens the background just a little bit, so it doesn't stand out quite as much. I think this will make for a nice background. And once again, I can hide it, and you can see what type of effect it has. Over here, I could also experiment with different modes. Currently, it's set to normal, but here I could do erase. And you can see what type of impact that has. So you can come through and experiment with these different modes to see if you get the effect that you're looking for. Here are just a few different options. I'll go up to normal and just leave that as the combined mode. Next, I want to add a bottom bar to my poster, and this is where I'm going to place in the address for our Kevin Cookie Company location. For this too, I want to add another layer. Just like we did before, let's click on the plus icon. And for the layer name, I'm going to call this bottom bar. All the other settings look fine, so I'll click on OK. I now added the new layer, and I see that it's sitting on top of the black overlay. This is exactly where I want it to appear. To add a bottom bar, I want to use the selection tool to highlight an area that I want to turn into the bar. Right up here in my toolbox, I have the rectangle select tool. I'll select this. Over here now, I can draw a rectangle on my image. Here I'll draw it right at the bottom. With the selection tool, when I hover over, you'll notice these different rectangles appear. Here I could use this top handle to expand it vertically. Over on the side, I could use this handle to expand it horizontally, or I could use the corner handle to expand it both vertically and horizontally. With my selection, let's say I don't get it quite right. Over here on the left-hand side, under the tool options, here I could click on this icon to add to my selection. So let's say I want to make it a little bit bigger. Here I could add to the selection area. You notice that it's expanding here. I also have the option to subtract from the current selection. Here I'll click on that. And here I could subtract from my selection. Here I'll bring it down to a nice rectangle. When I hover over these different options, here too, you'll see the shortcut key associated with them. Here I can press Shift to add to a selection, or I can press Control to subtract from a selection. You also have the option to do an intersect. Down below, I have additional options related to the rectangle select tool. Here, for example, if I want to make it smoother, I have the anti-aliasing. I could also feather the edges, make them just a little bit softer, get around the corners. Here you see that the corners of my selection are currently not rounded at all, but here I can round the corners if I want, and here I have many other settings as well. Now I want to add this black bar to the bottom of my poster. So with this area selected, I can use the paint bucket fill tool, and here I can fill in black, or here once again I can select the color, drag it over, and drop it in my selection. And here now I have a black bar at the very bottom. With this black bar on the bottom, I want to add a little bit of transparency. So just like we did before, I'll go to opacity here, and let's set it to about 60%. So this way it's a little bit darker than above, and this will give a little bit more contrast with the text that we place on top of it. With the rectangle selection tool, here I'll click on it once again. If I want to create a perfect square, as I draw out my shape, I can press the Shift key, and that'll lock it into a 1:1 aspect ratio. Over here, I'll check out. Here too, I can set whatever aspect ratio I want, and give it time. Here I can define it GIMP offers many other selection tools as well. And here we can use the rectangle select tool. I'll right click up above, and here we also have the ellipse select tool. So here if I want to draw an oval, or once again I could press shift and I could get a perfect circle. Here right up above, when I click on this, I also have the freeze selection tool. There's a scissors selection tool and a foreground select tool. Now with all of these different tools, here too I could add to a selection, remove from a selection, or get the intersect. So GIMP offers many different tools to select objects. And once you create your selection, you can fill them in with these different tools. With my bottom bar now in place, I want to add some text to it. I want to say this is the Kevin Cookie Company, and I also want to list out our address. If people see the poster and they think the cookies look good, well, I want them to be able to find it. Over on the left-hand side, let's select the text tool. You could also press the T key. Here I'll click on that, and with the tool selected, here I'll highlight the area of this black bar where I want to place the text. With the text area selected, right up on the top right-hand corner, I can click on the Font tab, and here I could choose the font. I've already selected the Chunk 5 font. Here I have the size set, here I could set the justification, and I have other settings as well. For the color, I'm going to select this and set it to white, and here I'll start typing in this area. I'll type in the Kevin Cookie Company, and right down below I'll place in our address. We have a location at 132 Main Street in Seattle, Washington. With the text, I can now select different lines. I want the name to be larger than the address. Here I'll select Kevin Cookie Company, and let me try maybe 140 pixels to see what that looks like. Here I could also expand the selection just a little bit for all of the text to fit. And here I'll select the address down below. I'll select this entire line, and let's set it to maybe about 105 to see how that looks. I think that looks pretty good. I want to move the text down just a little bit so it appears center aligned in this black bar. Here I'll click on the corner of the text field and let me pull it down just a little bit. So there, that's just about centered. I think that looks pretty good. To make my text stand out even more, here I'll select all of my text by pressing Ctrl A. I want to add a drop shadow to this text. On top, I can click on filters to apply different effects. Within filters under light and shadow, here there's the option for drop shadow. I'll select this. And here I can configure how I want my drop shadow to look, but I think the default looks pretty good. It adds a little bit of a shadow down here. This all looks good, so I'll click on OK. Over on the right-hand side, you'll see that it automatically added my text as a new layer, and it sits right on top of my bottom bar. And let's say I want to hide this bar altogether. Well, I'd have to hide this layer, and then I'd have to hide the black bar. But let's say I just want to hide them just all together. I can create layer groups. Down here in the bottom right-hand corner, I can click on this plus icon, and that'll create a group. Here, I'll call the group bottom bar. With my group created, here I could drag different items into that group. Here I'll take the text and drop it into the group. Here I'll take the bottom bar and I'll drop this into the group as well. And here I'll make sure that the text is on top of the bottom bar. Now when I click to hide the group, it'll hide all of those layers that are part of the group. Next, I want to add my stack of cookies to my poster. Here I see that it's the topmost layer. I'll pull it down so it sits right up above the black bar layer. And here I'll click on the eye icon so it becomes visible. Now first, I want to expand the size just a little bit. So once again, we're going to use the scale tool. Over on the left-hand side, once again, I'll select the scale tool. You could also press Shift together with S. And here I'll expand the image so it appears larger. And I want it to be right at about this point on my poster. I think that looks pretty good. Now that I'm satisfied with the scaling, I'll click on Scale. You'll notice that on this picture, I have a white background, and that doesn't look so good. Instead, I want a transparent background. To remove the background, over on the right-hand side with layers, let's first off click on Shift and the eye icon. That way, this is the only layer visible, and we can work just on this layer. Let's right-click on the stack of cookies and make sure that you have an alpha channel. I already do, so it's grayed out. On the left-hand side, let's select the Fuzzy Select tool. We're going to use this tool to select the white background, and then we're going to delete it. Under the Fuzzy Select tool options, make sure to turn on anti-aliasing and also feather edges. That way we'll be able to select around these cookies and it'll look nice and smooth. Down below, you can set a threshold for the tool. When we click with the tool, you can drag up or down, and that will also adjust the threshold. And in a moment, we'll see how that works. Down below, make sure to also check Draw Mask. This way, we'll be able to see what area of the picture we are removing. I'll now click on the white area, and you see that it highlights in magenta. This is the mask that's being drawn on top of the image. Here, if I drag my mouse up, here it's reducing the threshold, and if I drag my mouse down, it'll increase the threshold. So there it selects more of the cookies, and once again, if I drag up, it'll select less of the cookies. I think 80 or maybe around 70 is a fairly good point to be at, so here I'll see if I could drag it right to about that point. That does a fairly good job. You can see that area is now selected, and I can press the Delete key on my keyboard, and that's removed the background. Here I could click on this area here to just clean this up and get these spots as well. I want to make a few more tweaks to this layer or this image before I bring it back onto the poster. Over on the left-hand side in our toolbox, currently this group is set to the scale tool. When I right-click on this, here I can flip an object. I also have the option to rotate an object. Here I'll click on flip, and I can just click on the image and that'll flip it. Here, if I click it again and again, it'll keep flipping it. I want to have the cookies in this orientation. I also want to make sure that my cookie stack will be center aligned on my poster. Up once again in the toolbox, here I have my move tool, but within this group, if I right click, I see that there is the alignment tool. I'll select this. Next, I'll make sure to select this item. And here I have different alignment options. Here I want to make sure that it's center aligned. I'll click on that and you see that it nudged it over just a tiny bit. I also want to make sure that these cookies pop a little bit more. I want to give it a little bit more contrast. And to do that, I'm going to use the colors menu. Up above, I can click on colors, and there are all sorts of different color tools that I can use. I'm going to use the one called curves. Here I'll select curves, and this opens up the curves dialog. With curves, you can make your colors pop just a little bit more. Here on the bottom, you'll see all of the different lightness of colors used in your image. Here you have all the light colors and you have all the dark colors. By moving your curves, you could adjust them lighter or darker. Let's take an example. So here, for instance, I have all my light colors, and let's say I want to make them darker. Here I could drag this point and I could drag it down. And as I drag it down, you can see that I'm moving down this bar and the entire image is getting darker. So all my lights are becoming darker. I'll pull that back up. Let's say I want to take all of my darks and I want to make them lighter. I could click on this icon and I could drag this up, and you see my entire image is becoming lighter. Now, of course, I don't want to make such a drastic change. Those cookies won't look good. I just want to make subtle changes to make it pop just a little bit more. So I want to make the lights just a little bit lighter and the darks just a little bit darker. Once again, I just want to go with subtle changes. So here I'll click right up here on my curve and we'll make the lights just a little bit lighter. And down below, here I'll click on the curve once again and I'll make the darks just a little bit darker. And this forms an S curve. That's a really nice way to add some contrast, or basically give it a little bit of pop. This looks pretty good now, so I'll click on OK. These cookies are looking pretty good. I'll press the Shift key and the eye icon to once again reveal all of the different layers. Here I'll hide the top two layers and you can see my cookies on the poster. I think that looks pretty good and the color looks pretty fantastic. Next, I want to work on the logo. Here I'll click on the KCC logo layer to make it visible. The logo is currently sitting on top of my cookies, but I don't want it to appear there. So I'm going to move it and I'm going to scale it so it appears larger. I'll make sure to select the KCC logo layer. So here I could see it's selected with this yellow line around it. And you could probably already guess what tool we're going to use. Here I'll select in this category and let's make sure to select the scale tool. I'll click in the middle of the logo and here I can move it up to the top. Here I'll select the handle on the edge and I can increase the size of it. Here I'll try to place it in the center, but later on we can use the alignment tool to get it perfectly centered. This looks like a pretty good size for the logo. Here I'll click on the scale icon. Let's now make sure the logo is center aligned. Here I'll click on the alignment tool. Here I'll make sure to select the logo, and here let's click on center align, and there it nudged it over just a tiny bit. That looks pretty good now. Now, one thing I noticed is with my cookies here, it looks like there's a slight white border around that. And when we use the fuzzy select tool, it looks like it missed removing that. But that's no problem, we can very easily crop that out. And this is a tool that you'll probably use often. Over on the right hand side, let's select the stack of cookies layer. Here I see the yellow border indicating that this is the layer that I have selected. Within the toolbox, let's select the crop tool. And here I'll simply drag around my cookies and I'll make sure not to include that white border. That all looks pretty good, so I'll press the enter key and it's now cropped out those edges. On the poster, I want to make sure that we include our slogan on here. Deliciousness in every bite. It's true, these cookies are delicious. Just like we did to add the cookie company name on the bottom, we're once again going to use the text tool. Over on the left hand side, let's select the text tool, and then let's drag an area over here where we're going to place the text. I'll select this area. Within the text box, here I'll paste in deliciousness in every bite. I'll press Ctrl A to select all of the text. Here I can see the font is set to chunk 5. For the size, we need to go bigger than this. I'll set it to 200. And that looks pretty good. Here for the color, I'll go with white, and for the justification, I'll go with center. I want every byte to be on the second line, so here I'll reduce the size of the text box just a little bit. Now that looks pretty good. And next, I'll select the Move tool. I want to move the text to place it in a slightly better position. Now, one thing to note, with the Move tool and text, if you click on an area that's not text, you'll move another layer. I'll undo that. If you want to move text, you have to select on the text, and then you can move that item. So here I'll place it right at about there on the poster. I think this looks like a pretty good position. Now once again, I could use the alignment tool, but I think this looks good. I would like it to pop just a little bit more, and I think I could use the paintbrush tool to add a little bit of darkness behind this text. Over on the right hand side, let's add a new layer. Once again, let's click on this plus icon, and here I'll call this pop text. This looks good, so I'll click on OK. I see the new layer in the bottom right hand side. I'll place it so it's right underneath the text. I'm going to paint on this layer. Over on the left hand side, let's select the paintbrush tool. You can also press the P key. With the paintbrush tool selected, over on the right hand side, we can click into the first tab. This is the brush tab. And here I can see all of the different brushes that I can choose from. For the brushes, I'll select this option right here. I'll select the acrylic 03. Over on the left hand side where I have my colors, I'll reset it to the default because I want black to be my foreground color. With my brush selected, here I have many different options. I could set the opacity, the size, the aspect ratio, the angle. I can configure exactly what I want this brush to look like. But I think these defaults are fine, and I'll go with these. With my pop text layer selected, here I'll simply brush in back of the text. Here you see that I'm applying the brush and it's helping the text pop just a little bit more. And I think this is adding a really nice effect to my poster. GIMP offers many different brushes that you can choose from. Here I'll right click. Not only do you have a paintbrush, you also have a pencil, you have an airbrush, you have ink. You even have a category called My Paintbrush. And when I click on this, here I could click on the brushes and you can see all the different types of brushes you have. And you could even download additional brushes online. So really, there is a massive collection of brushes that you can use in your creations. This poster is really coming along nicely. Next, I want to make sure to include this last layer called Cookie Monster. We haven't done anything with this yet. Here I'll click on the eye icon and Cookie Monster is now visible. I'll click on the move icon and here I'll select Cookie Monster and I can move him down to the corner over here. So it just adds a nice pop of color in the bottom left-hand corner. As a very small tweak, and while I have the move tool selected, I'll select my stack of cookies and let me move it down just a little bit here so it sits a little bit closer to the bottom bar. I think that looks good. One more tweak I want to make, I want the background to be a little bit blurred out so the text and the cookies and the logo stand out just a little bit more. Over in the bottom right hand side, let's select the baking background layer. Then let's go up to filters, and within filters click on blur and then Gaussian blur. Within Gaussian blur, we can experiment with the different settings. So here I could increase the blur just a little bit, and here you'll see right in back how that adjusts the image. Now I do want people to be able to tell what the image is, but I want to just soften it and blur it out just a little bit. I think this looks pretty good. I'll click on OK. This poster is now looking fantastic, and I think we're just about done. Now I want to save the file so I can export it to the web. You'll be seeing this image all over Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Up in the top left-hand corner, let's click on the File menu and then select Export. Right here, I could type in a name, and by default, it's set to PNG. Over here, I could expand Select File Type, and I could choose whatever file type I want. Here I have GIF. If I go down, you'll also find JPEG and all of the most popular file types. I'm okay with this being a PNG, so I'll leave that and then click on Export. Here I can configure various settings related to PNG, but all of this looks good. I'll click on Export. And check that out. Here is the PNG with the poster that we created. I don't know about you, but I think this looks pretty good. All right, congratulations. You just designed a beautiful looking poster for the Kevin Cookie Company. In fact, we might even hire you as one of our designers. To watch more GIMP videos like this one, check out the playlist right up above. Please consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.